Hello, BookTube. It's almost the end of March. That seems amazing, but it's true. It's almost the end of March. April is almost here. And although April sometimes has its meteorological surprises, even in New England, there is no way to call April winter anymore. So the seasons are changing. Spring is coming, slowly but surely. Spring is coming. And at the beginning of any new month is a time for reading plans about that month. Yes, for a TBR for that month. So I thought I'd do a little TBR, one of many that I could do. Maybe I'll do a few of these in this coming week. A little TBR of April releases that I either have read or haven't read, and what I'm going to read them all, and what I think about them. Maybe some of them will interest you even more than they interest me, although these were picked for interest. Here we have this first one, Chris Lutaris. This is Shakespeare's Book. It's a new history of the First Folio that was put together by two former colleagues of Shakespeare after his death, and that has, as they say in their introduction, authorized, cleaned up versions of all of his canonical plays. And this book is the story of that book and all the maneuverings behind it. And I will just have to see. I'll just have to see how much of that story this book tells. One common theme running throughout a lot of the picks on this TBR is that the author is presented with a choice. They can either write an entire book mindlessly reciting the orthodoxy, or they can actually dig into their subject. And when it comes to a subject like the First Folio, I have to wonder whether or not the author will do that. There's quite a bit of mindless orthodoxy connected with the First Folio. An author who's writing a book about the First Folio, you would hope, would dig into that orthodoxy, wouldn't take any of it as gospel, would dig in and figure out what's going on. Who paid for this and why? What was Hemmings and Condell, the two men who made the book, what was their connection with Shakespeare? Are you just going to repeat what I said, that they were theater colleagues of his when you have no proof of that? Or are you going to prove that? Or if you're not going to prove that, are you going to come up with something else? Is this author actually squarely going to say all the weird things involved in the First Folio? There are a lot of weird details involved in this book. Is the author going to notice any of them? Because there's definitely an orthodoxy here. I guess on one crass level, it will boil down to whether or not this author wants this book on sale at the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust in England, in Stratford-on-Avon. That will mean an extra 10,000 sales per year of his book. Does he want that or does he not? And did that govern how he wrote the book? I will read it and I will report back. Then we have something, I just mentioned this on this channel the other day, and then no sooner did I mention it than it appeared on the horizon. This is Michael Warboys, and this is the American version of Doggy People. His book about how the Victorians made the modern dog. The idea that I get from this book is that it's about not only the shaping of individual dog breeds, most of which started in the Victorian era. There's all sorts of dog lore going back longer than that, but the parts that we can actually document, where we actually know what's going on, and also a lot of the visual standards that we use now for individual breeds of dogs started in the Victorian period, as so much of our modern world started in the Victorian period. But I think in addition to that, I think Warboys is also looking at how we think of pets. That also started in the Victorian period. Needless to say, this is right up my alley. Not only is it a history of dogs and how people think about dogs, which is a far cry from a book about the immutable relationship between humans and dogs. Whenever a book like that on the immutable relationship comes up, I'm always a little bit wisecracky skeptical, because technically speaking, I'm the only two-legged creature on earth who can write a book like that, and I never have. But a history of dogs and their interaction with humans, oh my, I have a bunch of those. And those are perfectly fair game. They are fascinating to me, absolutely fascinating. I didn't know that this was going to get an American publication, but I guess I should have thought that it would, because the American pet industry dwarfs the pet industry of the rest of the world combined. Americans are crazy for their pets, so maybe this... I'm glad that in this particular case, I think this is Random House? I don't remember who the publisher here is in America, but I'm glad they gave it a kind of cartoony cover. That's good. Because that's the way you will slip it past 90% of the American reading public that would rather die than read a work of history, is to make it look like this, and then they'll be involved. But either way, I'm glad that it's coming out. Then we have a book. This is Generations. The huge subtitle is The Real Differences Between Gen Z, Millennials, Gen X, Boomers, and Silence. and what they mean for America's future, which sounds very promising as a subject matter. Right up my alley again. But in this case, the thing that bothers me is the author. I don't know how you say her name. Is it Twenge? She wrote a book called iGen that was mostly sheep dip, almost entirely junk. The book was spawned from an article in a magazine that was junk on its own. I wrote an irate letter to the editor, and in my irate letter, which did not get published, I actually made mention of the fact that this article is just dumb enough so that it will almost certainly become a book. And it did, and it also made the author's career. All that Jean Twenge had to do for the pitching of a book called Generations with a huge subtitle like that was say, I wrote iGen. We will see. It wasn't just that I disagreed with the philosophical, the ideological framing of iGen. It was also that it was really, really poorly researched. It was the author deciding, here is what I think about my daughter's generation, and I'm just going to find things out there that bolster what I already think about my daughter's generation. I'm going to find things that bolster that, and if I find things that don't, I'm going to ignore them or misinterpret them intentionally. It was a shoddy book. And so I don't hold much hope that this will not be shoddy. It's unlikely that if you write a shoddy book and it's a commercial success, it's unlikely that you're going to change your ways. But I could be wrong. It's a subject that interests me, of course, so I will dive right into it. I sound a little skeptical. That is because, as I mention on this channel all the time, an author can either have or not have credit in the Bank of Steve. Jean Twenge, if we use that analogy, is overdrawn at the Bank of Steve. Now, that doesn't mean she's necessarily evil. She could make right. We will see. I will give it a try. It's an important subject. Then, okay, here we go. Well, okay, so quite a few of these in a row, not doggy people, but quite a few of these in a row are illustrating what I'm talking about, how the author has a choice. They can either write a book that digs into their own subject, or they can recite orthodoxy. If they recite orthodoxy, they're of precious little interest to me. I will still read their book because it'll be a major publication. I want to know what's in it. It will certainly get talked about, but it'll be of precious little interest. If all you're going to do is recite orthodoxy, then I already know the orthodoxy, so there's not much you can do about that unless you clothe it in gorgeous prose. And let's just say gorgeous prose in 2023 is kind of rare. But that is certainly the case, the question with this next book. This is by Daniel Gordis, and it's called Impossible Takes Longer. 75 years after, the subtitle of the book, is the fad in American books in 2023 is not crappy covers. We've seen the covers are actually quite good, including this one. The fad is a 1,000,000-mile-long subtitle. And in this case, the subtitle is actually a fully formed question. The title of the book is Impossible Takes Longer. The subtitle is 75 years after its creation, has Israel fulfilled its founder's dreams? With a question mark. So the subtitle is a question. And you can see right away, right, that this has two paths diverging in front of it. You can either do the orthodoxy about Israel on its 75th anniversary and a haven for enlightenment and cultural enrichment in the benighted East, and a beacon of democracy and hope surrounded by barbaric Arabic neighbors, etc., etc., etc. That is the orthodoxy. That will sell this book in every bookstore in Tel Aviv. Or you can look at it in the non-orthodox way. You can avoid the orthodoxy and answer the question. And if you are completely honest about that question, what is it again? Has Israel fulfilled its founder's dreams? If you're completely honest about that question, the answer will be no. And it won't be no because more perfect union and, we're always striving to be better and difficult takes time, impossible takes longer. It won't be that. It'll be the reason that the answer to that question is no is because there are still Palestinians anywhere in Israel. It'll be because the West Bank and Gaza still exist, because the people there have not been eradicated, starved to death, driven into extinction, because that was the founder's dream. So you say, has Israel fulfilled the founder's dream? The very first step you will take towards either a real book or orthodoxy is defining what that dream is. The founders were extremely clear about what that dream was, and it was not a two-state solution. It was not a permanent open-air prison in Gaza. It was the elimination of that problem and that people. So if that was the original founding dream, and if you're honest enough to admit it, well, then your answer will be no. But I doubt that this author will be honest enough to admit that. I doubt that this book will be very hard on Israel at all. We will just have to see. We will just have to see whether or not that is the case. Believe it or not, despite how I sound, I will go into it with an open mind. I want it to challenge orthodoxy and also to challenge me. We will just have to see. This next one is by Stefan Talty, and it is part of a little vogue of books about the Waco Siege, which is 30 years old. This is the 30th anniversary of the siege of the Branch Davidian compound in Waco, Texas, where a man named David Koresh, a man taking the name of David Koresh, walled himself up with a large amount of his Branch Davidian. They were a kind of a Seventh-day Adventist split-off group, a religious group, that lived in this big ramshackle house that they called Mount Carmel. And he decided to wall he himself and a lot of his followers, including a lot of children, in that compound when the U.S. government came calling. The U.S. government came calling in cattle trucks with armed agents. They didn't come with a search warrant and an urge to discuss what's going on out here. We've heard a rumor that you have illegal guns out here. Could you show me your gun stock? We've heard a rumor, totally unsubstantiated. The Waco law enforcement could not substantiate it, that some of these kids are being abused. I'd like to talk to you about this. Maybe talk to them about this. Now, it wasn't that. It wasn't one guy in an Oldsmobile. It was two tractor trailers. It was two cattle trailers full of armed agents who opened fire on the Branch Davidian compound immediately. As soon as David Koresh opened the door, they opened fire, and the Branch Davidians fought back. They were heavily armed. But they were also not at all what a lot of the newsy media was making them out to be. They were on perfectly friendly terms with the city of Waco, with the town of Waco. Plenty of people went out to Mount Carmel every weekend for ice cream socials, for movies. The Branch Davidians weren't knocking on doors in town, violently urging people to accept that David Koresh was the Messiah or anything like that. They weren't doing anything like that. They held jobs in town. And then a gigantic military raid came to their front door and started shooting. And it went from there. Those of you who are old enough to remember will remember it was everywhere in the news. Usually a federal standoff, a federal siege of a property lasts for a day, maybe two. This went on for a long time, many, many, many days. And Koresh let some people out, but he was also stalling, clearly stalling about letting anybody else out, much less coming out himself. And eventually the whole thing ended in complete tragedy, where the building caught fire. And a lot of those people, including Koresh, died, including those children. They died in the resulting government raid of the building with tanks, but also in the fire. And historians for the 30th anniversary are sifting through all of that and learning what they can from all of that. And Stefan Talty centers his on David Koresh himself, giving us probably the fullest popular press biography of Koresh. That was him as a little boy before he had the wild hair. Again, there's an orthodoxy here, and I don't hold out much hope that this book will fight against it. The more you research the Waco Siege, the more you reject the orthodoxy. That is just simply true. No one ever researches this story and comes out repeating the orthodoxy. So I have hope that Stefan Talty will not do that, but to put it mildly, I have been depressed by the offhand references to Waco this week, the last few days in the American press, because Donald Trump, who is a putative candidate for president, even though he orchestrated a violent insurrection to overthrow the government, he does not view any elections as valid. Even the one that he won, he thought was fraudulent. And he is not going around the country stumping for your vote. He's not interested in taking power by votes. He's not interested in doing that. Why, in other words, the federal government is allowing him to run for office, I have no idea. But he staged a Klan rally of his at Waco for the 30th anniversary in a pretty open gesture towards the misunderstanding, towards the orthodoxy of this, which he happens to support. And that was bad enough. There were kids that died horribly, knowing that their death was coming in this. It should not be used that way at all. That was bad enough. But hearing how the talking heads on cable news were talking about this, just matter-of-factly saying that the Branch Davidians were a violent separatist cult, matter-of-factly saying that David Koresh was sexually abusing all of the children at Mount Carmel, just matter-of-factly saying that. So I don't know how to go in this. I'm hoping that this author does right by his subject. Let's just put it that way. I'm really hoping that he does. It's a horrible, ugly, dark, complex subject. A complex moment in American history. I remember thinking that when it was going on, thinking, okay, there are two narratives that can spin from this. One, and they're both wrong. They're both extreme. One is the narrative that was obviously being implied at that Klan rally. The deep state, that big government will crush you like a bug if you step out of line. And the other is that there was this weird, violent, sex-abusing cult that needed to be extirpated. Anyway, we shall see. We shall see. I'm going to read every Waco book that comes out this year. I think there are 2 more coming. But then we have something for the gays. You got to have something for the gays. This is by Liz Bowery, who's an author I don't think I've ever read, and it's called Love, Hate, and Clickbait. And as you can tell from the cartoon cover, it is a gay rom-com. It is the story of a political operative who is working hard to get his candidate elected president. So he's shaping the image, he's working 20-hour days, all binging on Red Bull, all that sort of thing. Think Tim Miller. Any of you who know the American press commentariat, think Tim Miller. So young, good-looking, and just hyper committed to the job. And in this story, that political aide, that communications guru, encounters a data cruncher. And they immediately start getting at each other. It's not head over heels love, it's head over heels hatred. And at one point they're having a violent argument, face to face, spittle everywhere. And a random photo of that argument makes it look like they are passionate with each other, and it goes viral. And they have to figure out what to do about it. What to do about it? Do we add to the Streisand effect? Do we lean into it? All that sort of thing. So if this is done cleverly, I don't know if it will or not, but if it's done cleverly, then it could be the sort of thing that I really love. Not enough popular literature is dealing with the online world in which we all live, and that affects everything. Not a lot of popular literature is doing that in any intelligent kind of way. Let's not talk about so-called literary fiction. Its purveyors, its perpetrators, have had quite a bit to say about that. All of it dumb. But we'll see what this does. And I might also add, those of you who are rolling your eyes at the boring, bland, oversaturated cartoon cover here, and some of you might be rolling your eyes, you romance fans might be rolling your eyes and thinking, oh my God, am I ever going to see the end of that trend? I'm so sick of these cartoon covers. I might add here, yes, you are going to see the end of this trend. Absolutely you are. And you're going to wish for it back. Believe it or not, you are. Because the next trend that's coming for romance covers, mark my words, is AI-generated artwork, AI-generated covers. Mark my words. The minute that stuff started to seize the popular imagination, every romance cover designer in the world thought, oh no, well, enough of these cartoon covers. Let's do that. Let's do the AI thing. That's what everybody's talking about. And also, it's still a legal gray area. So somebody had to put this together. Granted, it looks like it took 3 minutes on a computer, but somebody had to do it. An AI? There's no price at all there. There's no cost at all there. It's a legal gray area. AIs, of course, don't generate anything. They regenerate things. They repurpose things. And there have been plenty of artists who've come forward in 2023's AI fascination and said, pieces of my work are clearly visible. They were clearly used in this, and I am not being compensated. But that gray area is going to stretch out for a couple of years, and the romance world is not going to wait that long. So, believe it or not, when I'm looking at a cartoon cover, I'm saying feast your eyes. Because if you thought this saturated the romance world, you just wait until AI covers do. Oh my God. It's going to be 10 times worse because it's free. But anyway, then we have Joan Biskupic. And again, this is, there is an orthodoxy here. We'll just have to see what road the author takes here. This is 9 Black Robes, and the enormous subtitle is Inside the Supreme Court's Drive to the Right and Its Historic Consequences. Here we have the Supreme Court with barbed wire in front of it. Cover designers have to do something, but there are all sorts of obvious observations about this subject. I'm a sucker for Supreme Court books. Until it became the Trump Court, until it became just an arm of the Republican Party, I read Supreme Court diktats and obiter dicta and whatnot. I read all of those things. I was a Supreme Court junkie for a long time. Now that it's an explicitly political wing of the Republican Party, I'm not so much interested in it because it's no longer the interesting innovation that it was for, I would argue, 2 centuries. But I'm still going to read this because the hard right drive of the Trump court has only barely begun. It's only barely, in my opinion, it's only barely begun. There's only one way to stop it from happening, and that is to expand the court. That when Joe Biden gets out of bed tomorrow morning, that's the first thing that he should do. He doesn't need Congress for it, and he has Congress, even if he does need them. The first thing he should do is expand the court to 15 judges. Sane people, ordinary people, normal people, not zealots, not with compromat that Donald Trump has in his desk in Mar-a-Lago, not anything like that. People who are not beholden to Donald Trump, but who are beholden to the rule of law, and who maybe are interested in the health and well-being of the population. Human beings, in other words, maybe even a progressive or two. God forbid. That's the only way to stop this. Because the people who are on the court are Trump acolytes who will live for 50 years. So if they're not counterbalanced, there's only one way to do that. They're not going to have a change of heart. And if that doesn't happen, then the court's rightward drive, I think the shape of it will be fairly obvious. I think it's fairly obvious. Take John Roberts, look at the United States Judicial Code, and identify any laws that were backed up by the Supreme Court that give any kind of social or political volition to anyone who doesn't look like John Roberts. Anyone. So, of course, the furor right now, the conversation, the cultural conversation right now is on trans people, and especially trans kids. If you don't think that isn't the language that we've used on gay people, you're nuts. Absolutely nuts. And that also applies to anyone else who doesn't look like John Roberts, who is not a woman and who's not black. The only way to stop that, the only way to get rid of the melodramatic barbed wire is to add human beings to the court. And I don't think Biden's going to do that. I don't think he's even going to propose it. And it's the last opportunity. So we shall see. We'll see what the author has to say. We'll see how doom and gloomy she is. Then we have a work of history. I don't know exactly a lot about this. I'm hoping that I will learn a lot, in time. This is by Jonathan Kennedy, and it is Pathogenesis, a history of the world in 8 plagues. And the key thing I don't know about this is whether or not it includes COVID-19. And if it does, well, again, I'm sorry to be a broken record here, but COVID-19 also has an orthodoxy. And if you're a historian, it's your whole job to challenge orthodoxy. If you're handed an orthodoxy, your whole job is to say, well, is this true? What is the documentation for this orthodoxy? If you don't do that, you might as well be a press release. But I don't know if this even includes that. It might not. It might go up to AIDS and stop there. And I don't know, actually, if it includes AIDS. It might not. Some of the candidates in here will be fairly obvious. The Justinian plague, the Black Death, the Spanish flu epidemic from a century ago. But what else is in here and what kind of historical lessons the author draws from, I don't know. Very interested to see. Very interested, especially since we've all gone through a pandemic now. Then we have a continuation of this series. I know already that I'm going to love this because I've adored every other volume in this series. This is the Photo Arc series by National Geographic. We've seen a number of them on this channel. Joel Sartori is the photographer who takes animals into his studio with black lighting, with curtains and everything, and films them. So they're not in the wild. They have come in for a photo shoot. And those are sometimes very hard to arrange. It's very hard to get an American bison into a studio and stand still so you could take his picture. But he managed to do it. The first book was called The Photo Arc, and it was incredible. Just incredible. And he's gone on from there to do a number of others. And the newest one is Insects. High definition, but it's not just the definition. It's also personality comes out in these pictures in amazing ways. If your library has a copy of the first one, Photo Arc, and you haven't seen it, take it out of the library and prepare to give it 2 hours of your time. It is an amazing visual document of all the other people who live on this planet. All the other people who live on this planet just want to be happy and healthy and raise their kids. I don't know that that's true in the insect world. I don't think it is. But we shall see. We shall see. I confess to, a photo arc about gigantic charismatic mammals is certainly going to have more of a personal resonance with me than a gigantic book of bugs, but I'm sure that I will still love it. Okay, then we have another one for the gays. You gotta keep the gays satisfied. This is science fiction. This is by an author going under the name of C.J. Dragon. I really don't think that's the birth certificate name, but doesn't matter. And this is self-published, which this was suggested to me by Amazon. And I've had so many good reading experiences that way that I take them seriously. I don't know if it's an algorithm or some bookworm that's doing this, or maybe it's just based on my reading and purchasing history, and maybe that's scary on its own. Doesn't matter to me. Like you, I am punch drunk for great reading experiences. I should be worrying about Big Brother and George Orwell and the downfall of Western civilization. But I do worry about those things. But when it comes to a recommendation that works, I'm thinking, ooh, good. Oh, that was good. And this was one of those. Who knows what I love reading. Indie published authors anyway. This is called The Price of Surrender. It's the Dharani Justice Book 1. It's the first book in a science fiction series in which Earth picks a fight with an alien species and drastically loses. They are drastically out-technologied. So it's not even a question, and it's not a long fight. As far as I know, it's not a long fight either. The Dharani win. And there's a peace. There's a negotiation. There's a settlement. And one element of the settlement that the Dharani insist on is that in addition to all the other concessions that they may or may not get from Earth, they also want a human. There's a captain of a vessel that actually hurt them in the war, the only human vessel that did. And it did it by hit and run guerrilla tactics. And they want him. In addition to everything else, they want him as part of the bargain. You deliver him to us. And they do. Earth does. And the captain is super sexy, and he falls in love with someone. When he gets to the Dharani Empire, he falls in love with someone. And I don't know any more than that. We'll have to see what happens. We'll have to see what happens after that. The impression I got from reading about this thing was very intriguing. It was that the author put a lot of time into world building, which quickie gay romance indie science fiction books typically don't do. Let's just put it that way, to be as gentle as possible. They typically don't put a lot of emphasis on world building. If this one does, well, that's great. That's fantastic. We shall see. The whole question will boil down to, is this a gay author? Not that the author is gay, but an author of gay fiction. Is this a gay author who's writing a science fiction story, or is this a science fiction author who's writing a gay story? That's what will determine whether or not, what the feel of that world building is. Then we have a bird book, much like my compatre Olive at a Book Olive. I say, give me all the bird books. It's much like that. I say, give me all the bird books. There was a photo arc volume about birds. This is by Anders and Beverly Gyllenhaal. No idea if they're any relation to the overrated actor. I'd like to think the name is rare enough so that they might be, but this is A Wing and a Prayer, the race to save our vanishing birds. And there, the pixelated version of that bird is vanishing, as we look. Another very well-designed American cover. I don't know what's going on there. But this is all about not only stereotypically spotlight endangered birds, but I would imagine it's also about the fact that all birds are endangered. Thousands and thousands and thousands of birds died just by hitting tall buildings while they're migrating at night. Thousands of them die that way. A guy will come by at the bottom of a building every morning with a gigantic sweeper shovel to get rid of the bodies. And plenty of other things too, I might add. Well over 1 million American birds die every year because domestic cats kill them. If you have a cat that you let out, your cat is killing things at night while the cat is out. And in the morning, your cat comes back and maybe gives you a bloody present, or maybe doesn't. But you might want to think about not letting that happen. You might want to think about that. But anyway, I don't know how many of those elements will be covered in this book, but give me all the bird books. I will gladly read about bird conservation. And then finally, we'll finish up with yet something else for the gays. And this is something that has a track record with me, whereas the other two did not. Because this is part of a series that I have read and really liked. And again, it was a series it's indie published, and it was a series that was suggested to me by Amazon. So totally proved its worth. That system, whatever it is. What are you doing, baby? We're almost done. Oh, you're so sweet. You're such a good girl. Oh, you are. This is A Touch of Steel by Annabelle Green, and it is part of the Perdition Club series of books. I've actually shown you at least one other Perdition Club book here, and it's a House of Ill Repute in London. It's fascinating historical romance that isn't usually revolving around dukes and duchesses and that and whatnot, and that's refreshing on its own. And I might point out, AI generated cover. Now this is a tiny little flicker, the very first snowflake of a blizzard that's coming. Take my word for it. I'm putting my guess down. I'm putting my marker down that in a year you will not be able to find a romance cover that is not AI generated. And they have a samey look to them, but not a bad look in this case. So we will see. The last House of Perdition, the last Perdition Club book that I read, I really liked. I liked it so much that I got it from Kindle Unlimited. I liked it so much that I bought a trade paperback. And if this is the same way, I will do the same thing. I'm a big fan of indie publishers. You write me a good story, and I don't care if you have a multi-million-dollar deal with FSG. I don't care at all. So we'll end with a note of the gaze, a touch of steel, with a of someone who has a lot of credit in the Bank of Steve. If you've written a book or multiple books in a series, and I've loved them all, well, then your credit in the Bank of Steve is pretty high. So there you go. A few April suggestions. Plenty more April suggestions that we could make. I'll probably do another one of these videos a little bit closer to April itself. Just wanted you to see them. Maybe think about them. See the bean. Maybe think about her. You're always thinking about the bean, though, aren't you? They love you, baby. They do. They love my baby. Oh, they do. They love you. Oh. Oh. Do you want to come down here? Oh, free yoga. You can't miss your free yoga. Oh, there you go. Get all the kinks out there. Oh, you can do it, baby. Are you going to bring those feet down at all, or are you just going to stay like that? Oh, goodness. Oh. Oh, nice and stretchy. Oh. Are you going to bring your feet down at all, little girl, or are you just going to stay up there like that? Good Lord. There you go. There you go. All right, well, as far as Frida goes, yoga goes, that was hot yoga. But anyway, those are some April books. Lots of questions about all of them. Can't wait to get to them. A ton of other things we'll go through. Maybe I should do, in addition to another TBR for April, maybe I should do a TBR BY, a to be read by you, a list of April titles I've already read that I can opine about and maybe recommend to you. Lots and lots of stuff like that. We'll hit April running. So I will wrap this up for now. I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.